What's up YouTube community, Bernd here, welcome back to another video lesson. This week we'll talk about tapping, yet another very often requested topic. In this video lesson I want to show you 5 of my absolute favorite tricks concerning this technique, and I really hope that they will spice up your playing too from now on. The big challenge for me this week was writing a lick that contains all of those 5 little tricks I want to show you. Since it got quite complicated, I want to dissect it in detail with you in this video lesson, and we will check out every little secret that's hidden in there. So here's the lick that I recorded for you this week. So as you can see, this one gets a bit tricky as soon as we speed it up. We're working with the very popular minor pentatonic scale first and mix it with a little bit of a Dorian vibe. After that, the harmonic center in the composition becomes E, so we're playing the E minor or Aeolian scale. Since the E minor or Aeolian scale and the A Dorian scale actually share the exact same notes, as you can see on screen, we could see it as a 1-5 cadence in A Dorian, but since we don't resolve back into the tonic here, it sounds more like a change of keys. That's pretty much all I want to say about music theory this week, since I'm pretty sure you want to get into the tapping now. The first trick I want to show you is actually one of my absolute favorite tapping approaches ever. We're essentially playing one scale box with our left hand, and then we're adding the notes of the other scale we want to play by tapping them with our right hand. So as you can see, we're using the very common A minor pentatonic scale, also in its most common position on the fretboard, I guess, starting on the 5th fret of the low E string. But interestingly, add notes we can't find in the pentatonic scale, like B the major second, and the major 6th, the characteristic Dorian interval F sharp. Another interesting touch I added here is that we are using 2 different rhythmic phrasings for this lick. For the descending pattern, we are playing so a tapped note followed by a pull-off, but for the ascending phrase we change it to Licks like that sound pretty amazing as soon as you speed them up and play them very fast. When I heard stuff like that for the first time, I had no idea what's going on, since masters of this playing style are able to hide the sound of the tap notes and make it sound like one stream of legato notes. That was also my goal with the practical demonstration. I don't want it to sound like I actually want the notes to merge together. If the tapped notes are articulated in the exact same way as the hammer-ons and pull-offs in the lick, and you also manage to nail the note spacing and play in time, it sounds really impressive and just like one effortless stream of legato notes actually. I really want you to experiment with that the next time you're writing licks or solos. Try combining 2 different scales and see what you can come up with. This is actually just a very basic example. The phrasing could be much more interesting here. We could jump between different strings, use some string skipping and also some more interesting sounds, but I'm sure you get the idea. Now let's move on to the second trick I want to show you. When we are tapping, we can also let the notes overlap, of course. That's something that's often ignored or not really thought about, because we are mostly thinking about a sound like that when the word tapping is mentioned. Again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that playing style, but I'm very sure you've heard it before and I'm not the first one to show it to you. So what we are doing with this concept is playing a very dissonant interval by tapping, either a minor 2nd or a major 7th, depends on which note is the root for you. So those 2 notes are just a semitone apart, so we create a lot of very cool tension like that. I really like this kind of crazy sound and use it a lot in my own licks. When you're playing like that, please make sure that the notes are actually overlapping. You don't want it to sound like that, for example. You really want that dissonant sound, those 2 notes rubbing against each other. The next trick is a bit harder to pull off again, but definitely not as hard and crazy as it looks like. We are performing what I like to call double tapping. Again, our biggest goal with this technique is creating a super fast and effortless sounding stream of notes. First we are tapping a note like C on the G string here, then we are pulling off, then we are hammering the same note, pulling off, and we're just repeating this motion over and over again and making it faster until it sounds like that. So what we absolutely don't want is the surrounding strings to ring, which can be a real challenge in the beginning. So to start out, you should slow it down and try it on the low E or high E string, for example, since those are not surrounded by two strings. So you can start out with an exercise like that. And you don't want the A string to ring here. So that's the first challenge you need to watch out for. And after you worked on that to a metronome, of course, you can start moving it around. So as soon as you start working on stuff like that, it gets more musical and turns into something you could actually use for a song or riff. So make sure to actually play in time. This is not just a crazy effect, it can also be used creatively as we discussed. Make sure you're playing actual 16th or 32nd notes so you can write something interesting with that. Up next we're looking at a much more simple but also very effective trick again. We are sliding with tapped notes now. This trick was famously utilized by Dimebag Darrell, for example, in his Walk guitar solo and sounds pretty cool and unique. It sounds something like that. So as you can hear, plenty of possibilities for some really crazy licks. Essentially we're just tapping a note, sliding up, hammering a note, sliding up, tapping a note, sliding up, and so on. So here it doesn't matter too much where you are actually starting the slides and which notes you are playing. It's just a really cool trick that I implemented in the lick. Of course, as always, I want you to experiment with this playing style on your own after this video. Maybe you can come up with something more melodic too. The final trick is really awesome and I could record an entire lesson on this one alone. Maybe I will do that in the future. Here I just use it as a cool ending for the lick. So one more thing that is often ignored is that you can tap more than one note at the same time. So this is similar to what we did with the interval tapping part, but this time we are tapping two notes with our right hand without any help from the left hand at all. So in the lick I'm essentially just tapping a power chord or perfect fifth interval. So that way of thinking when you're working on tapping phrases opens a lot of possibilities for super creative lick writing, and we should look more into that in a separate video. I'm also discussing tapping with more than one finger in detail in my online course 10 Steps to Modern Shredding. For now, that's all I want to show you for this week's video lesson. I really hope that you can use those 5 little tapping tricks for your own licks. Please remember that the tabs, guitar profiles and practice backing tracks for this lesson and actually for all my YouTube lessons are available on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Bernd. So tapping as a technique in general almost has a bad reputation nowadays since it's associated with uninspired repetitive licks on one string all the time. Let's prove all those critics wrong now and show them that it's a really cool and creative technique and not just a cliché from the past. For now, please make sure to subscribe to become an active part of my YouTube community today. Leave a like if you enjoyed nerding out with me and a comment in case you have any question I could answer for you. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for stopping by. I will see you in the next video lesson.